Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'atahu sahla wa anta taj'alul hazna idha shi'ta sahla. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All praises due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Lord of the heavens and earth. There is no one worthy of worship. In truth, is Allah. And all praise and salutations be upon Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all those who call unto his way up until the end of time. So last week we spoke about the fifth principle, which is the fifth principle amongst the six principles of Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahaab, which is the criterion between Bain al-Awliya ar-Rahman wa Awliya Shaitan. The criterion between the allies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the friends of Allah, and the distinction between the allies of Shaitan. And we might mention also the characteristics of the friends of Allah, those who fulfill his commandments and stay away from his prohibitions. And this in essence is the embodiment of taqwa. You know, as Talq ibn Habib said, who is a tabi, he said a taqwa is basically a comprehensive term which entails an ta'malu ala ta'atillah ala nur min Allah tarju thawabillah, is to enact the obligations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon nur, guidance and insight from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anticipating reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also in the antithesis, the opposite of that is an tatruka bi ma'siyatillah, to abandon sins, takhaf iqabillah ala nur min Allah, to abandon sins upon insight, guidance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or from Allah, fearing his dread and punishment. So, as we basically were describing the friends of Allah, this is their characteristics, that they have fear and reverence for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They free and far aloof from shirk, associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't call to themselves, they don't have ostentation, nor do they seek appraisals from people. And they're also far aloof from innovations, introducing novelties in the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are upon the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded, the servants to abide, وَإِن تُطِيعُوا تَهْتَدُوا. If you obey him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will be upon guidance. And Allah sent down the ayah, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبُكُمُ اللَّهُ. Say, if you love Allah, and this is an ayatul imtihaniyah, an ayah to test, our truthfulness and sincerity towards Allah, is subjugating yourself to adhering to the sunnah of Allah's Messenger. And all of these characteristics on the opposite end, the people of deviation and misguidance that appended themselves also to being a friend of Allah, which is false in turn, because their characteristics is mostly misguidance, evil, calling to themselves ostentation, seeking fame. And also, some of the characteristics is, shirk, which is involved in the forms of rituals and the worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the being far aloof from the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in terms of newly introduced novelties that are introduced in the deen of Allah. So that was just a brief overview with regards to the fifth principle. Inshallah, this is the last principle of Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahaab. If Allah grants us some time, maybe 10 minutes before I complete this, we can just go over and do a review of, the aforementioned, principles that we basically elaborated on. Okay, so Al-Aslu Sadis, the sixth principle. قال الشيخ رحمه الله تعالى رد الشبهات التي وضعها الشيطان في ترك القرآن والسنة والاتباع الآراء والأهواء المتفرقة والمختلفة، وهي أن القرآن والسنة لا يعرفهما إلا المجتهد مطلق. So the sixth principle deals with basically a doubt that Shaitan casts in the hearts of the believers to abandon the Quran and Sunnah. He basically takes him away from adhering to the Quran and adhering to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and treading upon the discretions or the discretions of people, the divergent opinions, mutafarika or mukhtalifa, وهي أن القرآن والسنة لا يعرفهما إلا المجتهد. So they say, these people say, the Quran and Hadith cannot be comprehended except a mujtahid. So a mujtahid, the characteristics of a mujtahid is someone that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is endowed with abundance of knowledge. Someone that knows all the different opinions of the companions, radiyallahu anhum ajma'in, all of them. What is mutlaq and muqayyid? What is the restricted and the unrestricted? These are fiqh and Islamic jurisprudence terminologies. What is a sahih hadith and what is a da'if hadith? What are the implications for a hadith to be sound? What are the implications for a hadith to be da'if? Jarh wa ta'adil, checking the veracity of the narrators narrating the hadith. History, tarikh, knowing the context of the particular rules and regulations, knowing how to apply it. Wajul istidlal. Also a nahu, a grammatical structure of the injunctions of the Quran, syntax, morphology, all these things, the expression that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stated in the Quran, how to interpret it, what the particular meanings denote, how to use it interchangeably. So these are the characteristics of a mujtahid mutlaq, like Imam Shafi, like Imam Abu Hanifa, like Malik. These are the characteristics that are basically imbibed in these individuals. So what Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahaab is refuting and dispelling is the people of falsehood say that you can't tread the path to interpret Quran and a hadith except if you have those characteristics. And Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahab, he continues, he says, wal mujtahid wal muwassafu bi kada wa kada. The mujtahid, the person that's endowed with knowledge of all the characteristics entailed in Islamic jurisprudence, bi kada wa kada, as we mentioned before. Awsafan la'allaha la tujad tamatan fi Abu Bakr Umar. He says the characteristics that the mujtahid have, not even Abu Bakr and Umar have these characteristics. Not even Abu Bakr and Umar have these characteristics. فَإِنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ إِنسَانْ كَذَلِكَ فَلْيُعْرَضْ عَنْهُمَا. And if they do not find a person that possesses these characteristics, knowing the Quran, knowing the Hadith, knowing the reasons of revelation, how to apply this, how to derive certain rulings in the appropriate and relative place. If you don't have these characteristics, according to these people, according to these misguided people, فَيُؤْرَضْ عَنْهُمَا. If you don't have these characteristics, then turn away from Quran Hadith. You want to inform me of an injunction of the commandments of Allah, or you want to inform me of Hadith, but you don't have these characteristics. And this is a false notion which they try to instill in the hearts of the people of the Sunnah. Faradan hatman la shakka wala ishkala fi. By default, if you don't have these characteristics, then upon you is not to inform me anything. You don't have characteristics. You're not a mujtahid. You're not a mufti. You're not a scholar. So why inform me anything? So there's no use in you informing me of anything because you don't have the characteristics of a mufti or mujtahid. وَمَنْ طَلَبَ الْهُدَى مِنْهُمَا فَهُوَ. Whoever seeks guidance from the Quran and Hadith according to these people, imma sindikun, you are heretic, wa imma majnun. Either you are a heretic or you are a misguided or insane person. This is what they claim. لِأَجْلِ سُعُوبَةِ فَحْمِهَا. Due to the difficulty in terms of the comprehension of the Quran and Hadith. Now we know Allah speaks in lucid and clear terms. We know the Prophet ﷺ, his expressions is very clear, lucid, there's no ambiguity. Every sane, common folk can understand the comprehension of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهُ وَبِحَمْدِهِ. Glory be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's free from every blemish, and all praise due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kam bayan Allah subhanahu shar'an wa qadran. How many times has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained with his legislative evidences wa qadran in his pre-decree, khalqan wa amran fi rad hadhi shubha mal'una fi min hujuhi shatta balagat ila had daruriyat al-amma. How many times that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clarified this accursed and evil notion of shaitan or from these people in many forms and facets in his Quran, so much so that the common folk understand the basic essentials by darurat, known by necessity, like salah. Every person knows salah. Every person knows hajj. Knowledge is rampant everywhere. Knowledge is accessible everywhere. It's at your disposal. Click of the finger. That is knowledge that is known by darurat. But the people of misguidance say, even though that this knowledge at its disposal, you don't have the characteristics of a mufti or a mujtahid to access knowledge, which is false. We'll clarify inshallah. And then Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahaab said, وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. He says, but many of the people, they do not comprehend and understand. And he brings forth the surah Yasin, and brings a few ayahs. He says, لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَىٰ أَكْثَرِهِمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. He said, many of the people, or it has been established that many of the people do not comprehend. And this is in Allah's preordainment and pre-decree. And Allah knows best in His infinite wisdom. إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا فِي أَحْنَاكِمْ أَحْلَالًا فَيَا إِلَى الْأَذْقَانِ فَهُمْ مُقْمَحُونَ. And we have placed upon them iron collars on their necks, reaching their chins, so much so that they are forced to raise their heads. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْ بَيْنَ أَيْدِهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed between them a barrier in front of them and behind them. فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. They engulf with, Allah enclosed the comprehension and the insight, and they are left in darkness. So, and this is the point that we wish to derive. Subhanallah, Allah protect us from this. Amen. وَسَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Whether you warn them or do not warn them, أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, they won't believe. Whether you warn them or don't warn them, Allah has decreed that they open misguidance. إِنَّمَا تُنذِرُ مَنِ اتَّبَعَ ذِكْرَ وَخَشِيَ الرَّحْمَنِ بِالْغَيْبِ فَبَشِّرْهُ بِمَغْفِرَةٍ وَأَجْرٍ كَرِيمٍ. It is only for those, the one who takes heed is for those who is reminded of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fears Ar-Rahman, the ghaib, the unseen. فَبَشِّرْهُ, give him glad tidings, بِمَغْفِرَةٍ وَأَجْرٍ كَرِيمٍ, giving glad tidings of forgiveness and a great reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we're going to go into the sharh of the clarification of Shaykh Muhammad Wahaab. Shaykh Fawzaan says, هذا والأصل أخير وهو مهم جدا. This is the last of the fundamental principles of Shaykh Muhammad Wahaab, and this is of utmost importance. وهو أنهم يقولون, these people, these misguided individuals, they say, إنا لا نعرف معاني الكتاب والسنة. We do not comprehend the injunctions of the Quran and the Hadith. ولا يمكن أن نعرفها, and we don't have the capabilities of understanding what Allah is trying to say, what the Prophet is trying to say. لا يعرفها إلا العلماء الكبار. They say no one can comprehend the injunctions of the Quran and the Hadith except the scholars. فيقول لهم, they say, القرآن في أشياء واضحة يعرفها العامي ويعرفها المتعلم. Shaykh Fawzaan says, say to them, Al-Quran has characteristics that are clear and lucid. يعرفها العامي ويعرفها المتعلم. Every common folk knows about these expressions in the Quran. The muta'allim, the one who's learning, also comprehends this. تقوم بها الحجة على خلق. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks in this clear and lucid terms, so much so that the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can understand that which is established upon them. وَفِي أَشْيَاء لَا يَعْرِفَهَا إِلَّا الْعُلَمَاء, which is true. There's many expressions and injunctions in the Quran that no one can comprehend except the scholars. وَفِي أَشْيَاء لَا يَعْلَمُهَا إِلَّا اللَّهِ, and there's also injunctions that no one knows except Allah, like when the day of Qiyamah is going to be, the descriptions of the hellfire, and that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the particular happenings and occurrences that will be unveiled. Naam, يوجد في القرآن والسنة أمور لا يعرفها إلا المجتهد مطلق. Naam, we say the Quran and Hadith do have certain particular facets in them which no one can comprehend except the mujtahid mutlaq. Right? فَاسْأَلُوا أَحْلَ ذِكْرٍ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I'm a student of knowledge. I don't know anything. I say Allah knows best. I go to someone that's more fortified and comprehends knowledge better than me, someone that's endowed with knowledge, and I seek advice from him. Right? So that is what Shaykh Fawzaan is saying. لكن توجد أشياء كثيرة يعرفها في عوام. He says many things in the Quran is clear and many of the common folk can understand it. ويعرفها المتعلم الذي حاز على قدر يسير من العلم. And the one who traces knowledge, or the seeker of knowledge, things will be made clear to him in his transition of knowledge. So the more you study Nahu, and this we know by trial and error, like I say, empirical trial and error. The more you study, the more you dedicate yourself to Tawheed, the more you dedicate yourself to sincerity and truthfulness, the more you study, the more you review books of Nahu, Hadith, the science of Hadith, the better you become. The more better. And the more better you become, the more insight you have, and the more insight you have, then you have the ability to derive certain rulings. And that's what Shaykh Fawzaan is saying. مثل قول تعالى وَاعْبُدُ اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah alone and do not ascribe any partners with Allah in anything. وَقَوْلُهُ إِنَّهُ مَنْ يُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ الْجَنَّةَ وَمَأْوَاهُ النَّارُ. Shaykh Fawzaan is saying, any person of the common folk will understand this. The very simple-minded person will understand this. It's something simple to understand. Do not associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Revere Allah alone. What is shirk? Anything that is explicitly for Allah, exclusive for Allah, don't attribute it to transfer to any person other than Allah, whether it's an angel, inanimate, animate. Everybody understands that. Whoever falls into that, Allah says, whoever associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah has forbidden and debarred him from Jannah and Nar, and his abode is hellfire. Wala taqrabu zina. Do not come close to a zina, immorality, lewdness. Every person of common sense can understand that. Hurimat alaykum maita. Allah has prohibited you the dead meat. Whatever is dead, whatever, do not eat that. Any person that has insight can understand that as well. Kullil mu'minina yaghuddu min absarim wa yakhfaduna furujam. Tell the believing male believers to lower their gaze and to preserve their chastity. هذه أمور الواضحة يعرفها العامي إذا سمعها. These matters are clear, even the common folk understands him if he hears him. And then the Shaykh Fawzaan, he explains this particular sentence, wal mujtahid wal mawsuf bi kada wa kada, that the mujtahid has certain particular characteristics as we made mention, knowing the Arabic language, knowing what is abrogate from the unabrogated, what is general, what is specific, what is authentic from inauthentic. Those particular individuals that are endowed with knowledge, Shaykh Fawzaan says, يَدَعُونَ شُرُوطًا لِلْمُجْتَهِدِ مُطْلَقًا قَدْ لَا تُوجَدْ تَامَةً فِي مَنْ هُمْ مِنْ أَفْضَلِ النَّاسِ مِثْلَ أبو بكر Umar. These characteristics that you require from us, you put this stipulation on us, and you're saying, we as lay people, or we as people of Quran and Sunnah upon understanding of the Salaf, we wish to tread the path in terms of coming close to Allah. You coming here and you are hindering us. You say, no, we cannot understand it. You are petty, inability to comprehend this because you don't have the characteristics of a mujtahid. Shaykh Fawzaan says, the characteristics that you stipulate on us, not even the likes of Abu Bakr and Umar have it. Not even the likes of Abu Bakr and Umar have it. Disclaimer, we are not saying that Abu Bakr and Umar knew all the sciences like we know today. Obviously it was codified, and after a period of time things transitioned like halal, haram, mandub, and mansub. All of these things are from the Tabi'in and down and codified in that particular sequence and stuff. So we say that Abu Bakr and Umar, they're the most knowledgeable people under the sky, right? Allah be testimony to their righteousness. Allah be testimony to them being inhabitants of Jannah. But these characteristics, not even Abu Bakr and Umar have. This is what Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahaab was saying. So how is it possible that you try to debar us or hinder us from comprehending that which Allah subhanahu has made incumbent upon us? So that's impossible, because not even Abu Bakr and Umar have these far-fetched and unfathomable characteristics that you try to ensnare and try to ward the people from adhering to. Wada shurut wada'aha man inda anfusim. He says, Shaykh Fawzaan says, these characteristics Abu Bakr and Umar don't have it. So who amongst you have it? You saying we can't read the Quran Hadith, we don't comprehend it. Abu Bakr and Umar don't have that characteristics. Who amongst you you people that claim, that the Quran and Hadith can be understood in this manner, who of you in your particular category have these characteristics to comprehend the Quran and Hadith? يقول الله تعالى أفلا يتدبرون القرآن. Do they not ponder over the Quran? هذا عام للمسلم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing the generality of Muslims. كل يعرف من القرآن ما يسر الله له. كل يعرف من القرآن. Every person comprehends the injunction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by that which Allah has made easy for him. Right? لقد يسرنا القرآن للذكر فهل من مدكر. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we made the Quran easy for him. فهل من مدكر. Why has he not pondered over that? So any person can comprehend the Quran in the injunctions of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states and makes mention of. فَالْآمِ يَحْصُلُ عَلَى مَا يَسْتَطِيعُ. The general person will acquire that which he is capable of. وَالْمُتَعَلِّمْ يَحْصُلُ عَلَى مَا يَسْتَطِيعُ. The one who is educated, or the teacher, or the one that knowledge is sought after, he will acquire that which is in his capability. وَالرَّاسِخْ فِي الْعِلْمِ يَحْصُلُ عَلَى مَا يَسْتَطِيعُ. The one who is endowed, is entrenched with knowledge, will acquire that which he is capable of. And then Shaykh Fawzaan quotes an ayah, أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَسَأَلَتْ أَوْدِيَةٌ بِقَدْرِهَا. He brings a parable, an ayah, and a parable with regards to these intricacies. He says, Allah descends rain from the sky, and the valleys flow with water according to the threshold and measurement of what they can hold. And then he says, كُلُّ وَادٍ يَأْخُذُ مِنْ سَيْلٍ قَدْرِهِ. Every valley has water which they are capable of holding. كَذَلِكَ الْعِلْمِ. With regards to knowledge also. أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى. That which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. وَكُلُّ قَلْبٍ يَأْخُذُ مِنْ قَدْرِهِ. Every heart has capability of retaining some sort of knowledge. Al-Qalb Ami, the heart of the common folk. Al-Qalb Muta'allim, the one who's learning, or the student. Wal-Qalb Al-Alim, the heart of a scholar. Wal-Qalb Rasikh fil-Ilm, the one who's endowed and entrenched in knowledge. Kullu wahin ya'khudhu biqadrihi. Every person will acquire knowledge in his capability, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has apportioned for him. بِقَدْرِ مَا أَعْطَاهُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَهْمٍ. He will acquire that knowledge which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has apportioned for him of comprehension. أَمَّا أَنَّهُ لَا يَفْهَمْ شَيْئًا مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ إِلَّا مُجْتَهِدٌ مُطْلَقٌ فَهَذَا كَلَامٌ غَيْرُ صَحِيحٍ. As for the statement of these deviants, these misguided people of innovation and people of rhetoric, whereby they try to hamper the people from comprehending and taking to that which Allah has commanded them with, which the Prophet has commanded them with, what the companions has commanded their students with. These deviants come and they hamper you away from that path. And Shaykh Fawzaan says, لا يفهم شيء من القرآن إلا مجتهد مطلق. They say no one can comprehend the Quran Hadith except those people that have the characteristics of a mujtahid mutlaq. And this is kalam غير صحيح. It's not correct and it is false. ويقولون, and they say محاولة فهم القرآن من التكليف بما لا يستطيع. He says these deviants, they say, to attempt to understand the Quran من التكليف بما لا يستطيع is an unpractical. It is an unpractical approach. What are you still doing to attempt to understand the Quran Hadith because you don't have these characteristics? وشروط التي ذكرها العلماء وقالوا لا بد أن تتوافر في المفتي يريدون بها. So the scholars have made mention that these requisites of the mufti, the one that issues legal rulings and verdicts, the people that are responsible for deducing legal rulings, they should have these characteristics. They should know what is the sabab nuzul, reasons of revelation, what is general, what is specific, hadith, how does hadith work, the interpretation of hadith, nahu, grammar, how the words are utilized. They should have these characteristics. For them, it's binding upon them to know these particular things. The one who's issuing legal rulings, al-mujtahid mutlaq, they basically encapsulate in that. وَلَا يُرِيدُونَ أَنَّا لَبُدَّ أَن تَتَوَافَرْ فِي كُلِّ مَنْ يُرِيد أَن يَتَدَبَّرَ الْقُرْآنَ وَيَسْتَفِيدَ مِنْهُ. And this characteristic is not required or demanded or forced and imposed upon the people that just wish to tread the path in terms of understanding, contemplating on the ayat of Allah, or taking to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Remember we said Allah's words, Allah's speech is clear. وَأَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكْ بِهِ شَيْئًا وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Any person of sound intellect can understand the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Prophet ﷺ words and his guidance, any person can understand, his guidance and expressions. So it's not upon us, and it's not demanding of us to have the status or grandeur of this knowledge of mufti. It's just the basics in terms of having sincerity and truthfulness and wanting to know what Allah intends and what the Prophet ﷺ intends by the Sharia. ثم هي شروط للاستنباط أحكام غامضة خفية. The characteristics of the mufti, knowing all that particular aforementioned requisites, they need that to derive rulings. What is ambiguous, what is obscure, ليست شروط في فهم الأمور الواضحة مثل التوحيد. And that is not required upon us, especially, and Shaykh Fawzaan says, with regards to Tawheed. Any person can understand Tawheed, even a toddler will understand what is Tawheed and what is Shirk, associating partners with Allah. وَالْوَاجِبَاتْ الظَّاهِرَةِ وَالْمُحَرَّمَاتْ الظَّاهِرَةِ. The wajibat, the obligation, mandatory things are apparent and clear, definitive and decisive. وَالْمُحَرَّمَاتْ, the prohibited things are clear and decisive, and they are easy to comprehend. And then the Shaykh says, هذه الآيات, the ayahs of Surah Yasin, all of it, مؤردين أن تدبر كلام الله وكلام الرسول وفي آخرها الذي من الله عليه وهو من اتبع ذكره وخشي الرحمن. So Shaykh Fawzaan is saying, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is rebuking those people that didn't take to the Quran and fulfill Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's obligations, like these people, the people of misguidance, that take you away from comprehending the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, take you away from the sunnah of Allah's messenger, right? And they cause aspersions and things like that. So Shaykh Fawzaan says, those ayahs of Surah Yasin is referring to that people, right? That they have knowledge or have understanding, but they made it difficult for people to comprehend that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made incumbent upon us to know. Except, and then he made an exemption. He says, Manittaba dhikra wa khashi rahman, except those who follow the mind of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They know what's demanding of them and what's incumbent upon them. Wa khashi rahman, and the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Shaykh says, فَهَذَا مَثَلُ الَّذِي فَرِيقَيْنِ, those who know, those who don't know. And he concludes, he says, حَتَمَ الرِّسَالَةَ بِمِثْلِ مَا بَدَأَهَا بِهِ بِحَمْدِ اللَّهِ وَالصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَى رَسُولِ اللَّهِ وَهَذَا مَا مَحَاسِنِ التَّعْلِيفِ وَالتَّعْلِيمِ وَذَلِكَ بِثَنَاءِ عَلَى اللَّهِ أَوَّلًا وَآخِرًا. He says, and this is a conclusion of the sixth principle, of Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahaab, who praise due to Allah, and peace and salutations be upon the Prophet ﷺ. And we end this, this is a beautiful book and treatise that we basically educated and disseminated, and all praise due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, akhiran. So this is the completion of the sixth principle of Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahab, rahimahullah ta'ala. So inshallah we'll just go through quickly, if Allah permits, through the aforementioned principles that we went through. So who knows the first principle from amongst the six principles of Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahab? The first principle is al-ikhlas, having sincerity towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, right? Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahya wa mati lillahi rabbil alamin la sharika lah. My salah, my sacrifice, my living and dying is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, exclusive for Him, la sharika lah. Do not associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We also made mention why, from the onset with the intro of the book, giving the time period of the background drop of Shaykh Muhammad Wahab, the rampant deviations and occurrences in his time with regards to shirk. And we also made mention of why people have fallen into these particular shirk and deviations and opposing Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is due to them following their forefathers. It's due to them not educating themselves with knowledge. You're not, fulfilling that obligation. Talabul ilm faridatun ala kulli Muslim, as Him Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said. And due to that, the ignorance or the inability to fulfill the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that cause him to end up in basically in error or in misguidance. So that's the first principle. The second principle is al-ijtima' fi din, to hold fast to the congregation, the community. And the reason why we mention this is because the injunctions of the Quran, like as-salah, like as-siyam and hajj, all of these rituals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made, legislated upon us, you cannot do it individually. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered and commanded the males to make salah in congregation. Making salah in congregation is what? A communal obligation. Fasting together, culmination of comradeship. Right? You see the moon in your precinct, in your locality, you fast all together. You have Eid, you establish Eid in congregation. Everybody rejoice with the delight of Eid. You cannot do that alone. There's no monasticism. There's no, isolating yourself. You need to be with the jama'ah, sticking with the congregation. And we made mention also, where the people of misguidance, where they say, Yadullah fawqa jama'ah, the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is upon the jama'ah. We say to them, kalimatul haqq yuridu biha batil. You say a statement of truth, but they intend falsehood with it. So we say a jama'ah is kullu ma yuwafiq al-haqq wala kunta wahda. Anything that agrees with the truth, even if you be alone, then you are the jama'ah. And we also may mention the forewarnings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with regards to a brotherhood or the establishment of the community, not backbiting, not rupturing the brotherhood, not having malice or evil intent, not to boycott and forsake your brother for more than 3 days, reconcile and treat people in a goodly manner. All of these things is to establish the upkeep of the community and not to disrupt the jama'ah. And then the third principle we mentioned is the listening and obeying to the ruler. وَلَوْ كَانَ عَبْدًا حَبَشِيًا. He said, even if it be a Abyssinian slave that rules over you, you give your loyalty, you pledge your allegiance. In the hadith of Ubadah ibn Samit, where he says that we pledge allegiance to Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the times of prosperity and the times of adversity, and we do not remove our pledge of allegiance even if the ruler has athratun alayya, even if we have favoritism or usurps our rights or usurps our wealth or beats our backs. We fulfill his commandment if he orders us with something. And we also made mention that the ijma' of the scholars with regards to this, the ijma' of the scholars with regards to listening and obeying to the ruler, even if he be disobedient or evil, right? And we also made mention with regards to removing your pledge of allegiance, it will basically, from there, bad things will ensue, like killing, disrupting of the community, eroding and stuff like that. So the Prophet ﷺ prophesied the foretelling of these things that will occur at the end of times, and he also gave us a remedy to adhere to his guidance if in the event of these things occurring. And we also made mention why there's a need to have a ruler or a governor for authority, like the imam that's leading the salah. We cannot make salah without the imam. We cannot have fast without the a majlis qada, even if they be on deviance. Like Shaykh Albani rahimahullah ta'ala, he says you have to follow and adhere, especially when it comes to fasting and the sighting of the moon and the breaking of fast and the establishment of Eid. You have to follow the ruler in your precinct and your place where you reside. You cannot do things on your own. You cannot remove yourself from the authority of the leader in your country. So we mentioned also with regards to the intellect basically being testament to this. We gave examples with regards to a dog or the shepherd or the herd. It needs a shepherd to guide the cattle. Without that, there will be chaos, there will be anarchy, there will be no sort of arrangement or any sort of obedience or following of instructions. So that was the third principle. And the fourth principle was knowledge, the importance of knowledge, the grandeur of knowledge. Who are the scholars? What is knowledge? Qala Allah, Qala Rasul, Qala Sahaba. How to derive knowledge. Who are the adherents of knowledge? Utilizing the Quran, Hadith, and the understanding of the companions, applying it in its appropriate and relative places. Not taking things out of context, not displacing knowledge in its incorrect place. So that was the fourth principle of Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahaab. And he also made importance of statements of the Salaf with regards to treading the path of knowledge, because it comes to your aid in the times of despair, it comes to your aid in the times of loneliness, it elevates you in the sight of Allah, it relinquishes all forms of loneliness and estrangement, and you become a guide for others if you uphold and you tread the path of knowledge. And the fifth principle is the criterion between the allies of Allah and the allies of Shaitan. The people that yearn for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they fulfill His obligations, they refrain from His prohibitions, shirk being the foremost of the obligations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to stay away from. The people that append or ascribe themselves to being friends of Allah, all of them tread paths of deviation, whether it's a Qadariyah, Shadaliyah, Chistiyah, all of them have partial resemblance to deviation and misguidance in them. And all of them who claim this particular title of Wali have all their characteristics embodied in them, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has abhorred, like shirk, like innovations, like even kufr, statements of disbelief, and all those abominable things. And as for the Wali, on the other end, he is revered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of his adherence to the Sunnah, his abandonment of shirk, and his fulfillment of Tawheed. In every facet of his life, every circumstance in it, every dilemma he's in, is upon Tawheed. He's calling to the Sunnah, he's warning against innovations. And this is the Wali, the friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't cease to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon that which Allah has made obligatory upon him. And then thereby tends to the path of voluntary deeds until Allah becomes his eyes by which he sees, his hands by which he touches, his feet by which he walks with. And the end of that hadith is Prophet says, if he asks Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will definitely respond to his request. And if he seeks refuge in Allah, Allah will surely grant him asylum and shelter. And these are the characteristics of the awliya Rahman or awliya or Shaitan. Everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abhors, that is the characteristics of awliya or Shaitan. And we, subhanAllah, with regards to this particular juncture on the wali and shirk and deviation, we make a disclaimer and we make it clear to the listeners that when we call to Tawheed and we invite people upon courtesy, upon insight, when you speak to people in a amicable manner, if we make error, we see people make error and people indulge in shirk, we speak to them in a very kindly manner. We don't rebuke them. We don't establish, proofs immediately upon them. It takes time, gradual, step by step. And we're not here to make people out, to excommunicate them from the pale of Islam. That is a great lie and fallacies that they try to attribute to the people of Salafiyah or the people of the Sunnah. So we say, if you quote to us, scholars like Ibn Hajar, like An-Nawawi, great ulama, As-Suyuti, great ulama that we revere, and we stated this from the onset of our talk, from the intro of Shaykh Muhammad Wahab, even in his time, the fallacies attributed to him. He don't follow a madhab, he follows the Hanbali madhab. There's many documentation of books that he written other than Tawheed, fiqh, history, following the Hanbali madhab. And his encounters with people that he had of his adversaries, saying, I do not declare anybody to be a disbeliever until I establish a proof upon them. All the particular guidelines or the impediments, and we made mention of that as well, whether the person can comprehend the Quran Hadith, whether the person is clumsy or has a understanding of the Quran Hadith that he's training upon, we clarify that to people. If he's under duress, if he's forced, or is maybe just given this sort of information by his alim or maulana, then we eradicate this. We put things in its relative and appropriate places. But if we see the person is upon deviance and they treat this after advising him and admonishing him, and he's still upon that and he's calling to shirk and he's calling to his innovation, then we say, no, the scholars, this is a guideline, this is a criteria, this person is a mushrik. And we are not in authority to do that. That is a judicial process that he must go through, and the umara, the governors or rulers, will declare that ruling on that particular person. The reason why we emphasize on this, we emphasize when we give da'wah, we call to the people to tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the sunnah of Allah's messenger, that we treat lightly. No, we treat lightly. And we say, if you bring us scholars, that made errors here, made errors there, then we say, may Allah pardon them, may Allah forgive them. Don't you fall into the same error they made. So Imam Nawawi, rahmahullah ta'ala, Allah revere him, may Allah grant him high place in Jannah, or any of the scholars of the past, or even of the Salaf, they made errors. Do not follow that, scholars in the error. Do not follow scholars in the error. That's why the Prophet said, of the person of ijtihad, if he tries his best, his utmost sincerity and truthfulness to try to attain the truth with his legal discretions, right? And he errs in that, then he will get one reward. Allah grant him one reward. If he tries his best with his utmost sincerity and truthfulness, and he gets it right, then he gets two rewards. So those scholars that try their best in terms of clarifying the sunnah, publishing works, doing service to the ummah, we say, may Allah reward them all the Jannah, and forgive the sins. But you do not fall into that same error. You do not fall into the same error that they fell into, because we are obliged to follow the Quran and Hadith. Now Allah commanded us to follow the Prophet ﷺ, and we cannot erect anybody alongside him ﷺ and his guidance. So we say to the people, when we make da'wah and invite them, that this is not our methodology. Quran and Hadith upon the statements of the Sahaba, the four Imams, we are not far aloof from the four Imams. We do follow the Imams upon their blueprints and their guidelines, if that is in conformity with the Quran ayah, if it's upon understanding of the Sahaba, upon understanding of the Tabi'in, and is utilized in the correct context, then we follow, that Imam in his legal ruling. But if he makes a mistake, and we give example, like Imam Shafi will say, if you take wudu and you make one strand of hair, we say, that's his ijtihad. We don't follow him in that. We're not obliged to follow Imam Shafi in that. And there's no harm upon us, because Imam Shafi said, if you follow a hadith that contradicts my ruling, then take to the hadith and abandon my ijtihad. So we follow the Imams on their blueprints in terms of their guidance, right? So they admonished us and exhort us to follow the hadith of Allah's Messenger, and we follow that. If there's obscurity in the hadith, maybe we don't understand it, the hadith, then yes, we take recourse to the statements of the Imams, statements to the scholars, because they are endowed with knowledge. They are endowed with knowledge, and we seek recourse with them. But other than that, we are not obliged to follow the Imams or blind follow them with the expense of abandoning or forsaking the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is the last principle, the doubt that Shaitan basically casts on the hearts of the believers in terms of making them feeble and weak, and saying they are weak and they can't comprehend the Quran and Hadith because they are not endowed with knowledge. And this was another false fallacy. We have clarified this as well. Is there any questions that the brothers might have? They can answer, inshallah. Inshallah, class will, no, this is the last class, but inshallah, maybe in next 2 weeks or so, maybe you need to consult with the administration of Tayibah, then we can start again, inshallah.
When someone says that you're Salafi, what do you say to them?
The word Salaf is a ascription to a time period, a epoch. Is a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "Khayrun nas qarni alladhina yulunhum thumma alladhina yulunhum." The best generation is my generation, and those who subsequently precede them, like the Tabi'in and the Tabi'in. And the four Imams are basically encompassed in that. So Salafi is a ascription to a time period. Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala said it's binding on every individual to ascribe to that path, because everybody must aspire to be upon that particular methodology. So that is the definition of a Salafi. In his creed, his belief in terms of how the Prophet ﷺ believed in Allah, the Prophet ﷺ informing us of the descriptions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the injunctions of the Quran, and how the companions, how they derive rulings, and the Tabi'in. That is the methodology that we should tread in terms of character as well. Your interaction, mu'amalat, and methodology. So that is the way of the Salaf. That is a Salafi, ascription to a time period. Even if you come in today's time, but you have that methodology in treading that path, in terms of deriving rulings, and upholding that rulings, you are a Salafi in treading that methodology. And it's binding on everybody to ascribe to that way. Because many other people that fell into innovations, that fell into shirk, have not ascribed themselves to that particular methodology. It's a sacred methodology. And the only remedy for this ummah is to return back to that particular methodology. Like Imam Malik, he said, nothing of the latter, part of this ummah will be rectified except that which rectified the first part. So what's not considered deen then cannot be considered deen now, meaning the deen is already complete and fulfilled by Allah's Messenger.
It's not necessary to say that you are a Salafi. Not necessary that you utter those words.
If there's a necessity,
You can say when you follow the Quran and Sunnah.
no,
But in case of other people in
No.
conflict.
no, we say no. You can't follow Quran and Sunnah because every Tom, Dick and Harry follows Quran and Hadith. You must make tamyiz. Your dawah must be upon distinctive traits. And we mustn't be shy to say we are Salafi, because this is a revered term. It's not splitting. Because had there been splitting, had the people been upon one path, there wouldn't have been misguidance. So every goodness is upon the way of the Salaf. And the Mu'tazilas also say we follow Quran and Hadith. The Shia also say they follow Quran and Hadith. And they bring you forth. They produce Quran and Hadith. Quran and Sunnah. But you must say upon the understanding of the Salaf.
Yeah, upon the understanding of the Salaf.
Yeah, so now you become a Salafi.
No.
Now you tell the Shia that, or the Mu'tazila, or you tell any Maulana or Molvi, you say no. Yeah, I'm not in that way. So now you make tamyiz. No, you say no, you must also follow us. It's an obligation upon you to follow the Salaf. You say no, I do not be upon it. Then you're the one who's dividing, not me. You're the one who's dividing because you want to separate from the Quran, Hadith, and understanding of the companions. We say you're the one that's rupturing this methodology. But we do say that, we follow Quran, Hadith upon understanding of the Salaf. In everything, in our Aqidah, our manhaj, our interaction, every single facet of life, irrespective of what dilemma we find ourselves in, whatever predicament, we must tread that path, no matter how hard, difficult it is. And with Allah's help and aid, that will be basically facilitated for us.
Shukran, Shaykh. Next class, inshallah, will be there.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
ياسين القرآن الحكيم الكبري بوبا